Oh, In economics, demand refers to the willingness of a consumer to purchase a good or service at a given price. In this case, the consumer is willing to pay $1 for a single candy bar. Supply refers to the amount of a good or service that is available to consumers at a given price. In this case, the CEO of Nestle is offering consumers a single candy bar for the price of $1.10. A market is anything that consists of a buyer and a seller. Supply and demand are known as the market forces because they are what determine both the price and quantity of a given good. The supply side refers to the seller, while the demand refers to the buyer. Each party has their own desired price and quantity they are willing to negotiate. These differing forces interact to determine an equilibrium price and quantity that is reasonable for both the buyer and the seller. In a free market, which is one without regulation by any outside forces, price always moves toward equilibrium, which is represented as the point where supply and demand meet on a graph. The equilibrium price and quantity establish a mutual compromise for both the buyer and the seller. Here, both the consumer and the business providing the good are happy with a price of $3 for 30 units of the given good. Any other points are examples of disequilibrium, meaning that the quantities are disagreed upon for the given price and vice versa. Any point that lies above equilibrium constitutes a surplus because the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded. This means that there are more goods than are demanded at that given price. Any point below equilibrium constitutes a shortage because the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied, meaning that there are not enough goods available to meet the demands of consumers. Now that you have a basic background of supply and demand, we want you to write down your favorite snack food and produce a list of circumstances that may cause you to buy more or less of it. Try to include at least 3 reasons that do not depend on the price of the good. Our goal by the end of the video is to have you become aware of the scenarios that alter your purchasing patterns. Most of you probably wrote down a price change. For example, if your good becomes more expensive, you would buy fewer, or if they became less expensive, you would buy more. This is demonstrative of the law of demand, which outlines the idea that as price increases, such as moving from point A to B, you demand a lower quantity, and if price lowers, you demand a higher quantity. And this represents the inverse relationship between price and quantity on the demand curve, and this is the reasoning behind its downward slope. In the event that someone alters the quantity of a good that they buy because of a price change, this is known as a movement along a demand curve, not to be confused with a shift. Supply, on the other hand, is upward sloping to show the direct relationship between price and quantity. As one increases, so does the other, and as one decreases, so does the other. This is known as the law of supply. And this makes sense because sellers want to charge more if they supply more of their good, and this is because they want monetary gain. This self-interest is known as the profit motive, and it is one of the leading causes of any movements along the supply curve. A shift in demand is caused by a change in the consumer's desire as a whole and is completely independent of the price of the good. For this reason, demand shifters are called non-price determinants. To demonstrate each shifter, we are taking you to the home of supply and demand. What you looking for, buddy?
Where's the eggnog?
I mean, it's August, so...
You're lying.
Seasonal changes alter the demand for, you guessed it, seasonal goods. In this case, eggnog. This means that in the off-season, fewer people demand these goods, and they are typically found at a less expensive price. Hey yo, why is this fish so expensive?
I know the perfect alternative. Look at this bad boy.
The demand for meat in this scenario increases because of the price of fish, which is its alternative. Since the fish price is higher, you would resort to the less expensive meat for the time being. Ooh, hey, we making tacos?
Who do you think I am? Of course we're not making tacos. You know how we do it in this household?
Tastes and preferences refer to the certain goods that a person likes rather than others. In this case, Ethan would prefer to eat 5 pounds of rice rather than eating tacos. The corresponding demand changes for each good are shown. This factor is very important to keep in mind when it comes to societal changes which alter lifestyles and consumption patterns in the economy. Ethan, why'd you only get one great value peanut butter?
It's kind of been rough at work, you know. I don't really make that much anymore.
How's work been?
It's been pretty good. You know, I just went from $9 to $9.25. Look at all of these.
For normal goods, an increase in income means a consequent increase in demand. In fact, normal goods are defined based on whether or not their demand increases with an increase in income as well. Examples would be basic commodities and groceries such as milk or eggs or toilet paper, etc. A change in income is not to be confused with the income effect, which is when one feels richer or poorer because prices have changed and now their income buys different amounts of the same good. One type of normal good is a luxury good, which is usually only demanded with a great amount of wealth, as it denotes status or great craftsmanship. They are usually only demanded with a very large increase in income, as they tend to be extremely expensive. Examples would be fur coats or luxury cars or diamond rings. On the other end of the spectrum, there are inferior goods whose demand decrease with an increase in income. This is because these goods are no longer desired as they tend to be lower in quality than normal goods. Of course, this means that a decrease in income will increase the demand for inferior goods, however, because they are less expensive. Some examples of inferior goods would be generic or secondhand products. What you got there?
Obviously some Wheaties.
Why?
Kyrie Irving told me to get these things.
Marketing is an advertisement strategy used by firms to gain publicity for goods and services. This publicity tends to appeal to the consumers and therefore increases the demand of the good, so price and quantity increase as well.
Dang, this ranch kind of cheap. You already know what that means.
Complementary goods are those which are usually purchased together. This means that if a consumer buys one, they are likely to buy the other. Examples would be peanut butter and jelly, but in this case, Ethan's demand for pizza increases because there was a low price on ranch. Supply shifters are results of businesses selling their products in order to meet the demands of consumers. This graph shows a rightward shift of supply, which decreases consumers' price for a higher quantity. Every shifter that causes an increase of supply also represents an increase of short-run productivity. Many of these, however, can lead to long-run advancements such as technology and productivity. The biggest shifter of supply is input costs for a firm. This is defined as the total price of resources needed for production of a certain good. An increase in input costs would lower supply because the goods are more expensive to produce. If the cost were to decrease, though, firms are able to supply more. These supply shifts have a direct impact on the market price and quantity, which affect both buyers and sellers of the market. The example above follows a lower chocolate supply after an increase in cocoa price, as cocoa is the main ingredient of chocolate. This communicates the importance of input costs on production.
Yo, you trying to hit up that Aunt Jemima?
Yeah, first it's off. It's Aunt Jemima, okay? And it's $2.82, but like, look at this. Miss Butterworth, 4 cents cheaper. Now it's thicker and richer than ever before.
This supply shifter is an incentive for companies to produce more or better goods, as their suppliers are largely dependent on competition with other firms who produce similar goods. In order to profit, the good must be making the company money. In this case, the Butterworth Company has supplied more of its newer product, which consequently lowered its price in comparison to lead competitor Aunt Jemima.
Hey, you heard of those new Wi-Fi bulbs?
Yeah, they're kind of nice. Like, I mean, they're $20, but I mean, it does come in two, I guess.
Walmart is arguably one of the leading grocery stores because of its immense supply. The company has found several ways to lower their input costs and increase their productivity and technology. These advancements are what makes the stores so successful. Technology like the convenient self-checkouts and productivity, which maximizes efficiency, has led to Walmart creating a mutualistic price and quantity relationship for both buyers and sellers. This economic success is largely based upon a thorough understanding of supply and demand and their mechanics. The comprehension of their functions are a crucial part of consumption and its application to economics. Take this time to revisit the list that you made at the beginning of this video and make any mental alterations relating to what you now know. Make sure you know the difference between a movement and a shift along both the demand and supply curves. A movement tends to show the relationship between price and quantity for both supply and demand. A shift, however, is completely independent from price. Make clear that demand is the market force that has the inverse relationship between quantity and price. Furthermore, quantity supplied and price have a direct relationship, meaning they both move in the same direction. These rules only apply to movements. It is very important that you understand price equilibrium and quantity equilibrium are where supply and demand meet. These two values are typically set for fairness and efficiency to be maximized. Most importantly, realize that supply and demand are equally as important as they play a key role in keeping both buyers and sellers happy.